Hey there, how's it going? Michael Reed here with the Adaptive Male podcast. Today we're going to talk about people pleasing and nice guy syndrome and avoiding conflict and trying to keep the peace and trying to do everything you can to make sure you don't upset the people around you at your own detriment. This can pop up in your relationships. It can pop up in your work life. It can pop up in your home life. It can pop up with your friends, your family, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your parents, lots of different people. And it's not to say that you should be out there trying to pick a fight with everybody you can every time you disagree with something. But it is to say for those people out there who may have an inadvertent fear of speaking their mind, of being honest about how they really feel, honest about if something's bothering them, honest if they disagree with something, honest if they think the course of action moving forward is not working, or if a particular behavior that's been reinforced currently is no longer working for you. And so what we're interested in here is talking about the neuroscience behind what's going on when you have these opportunities to confront these things and be honest and try to challenge the status quo within the relationships in your life, and why you're not. And to understand that essentially what's going on in your head essentially is an algorithm. It's an algorithm that's been coded over years and years and years through a lot of different things that point you in the direction of trying to avoid conflict for the sake of pleasing others at your own detriment. Oftentimes what we'll do is sacrifice authenticity for attachment with people around us to make sure that they're happy with us the way we are, instead of just truly being who we feel we may be. So what's going on in the head? What's going on in your brain as this happens? So let's take a situation. We're going to start off with a basic situation. This is pretty applicable to most people, but imagine, if you can, imagine you walked into a situation where you need to have an uncomfortable conversation with your spouse, with your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, maybe a parent, maybe a friend. Something that they're doing or have done repeatedly is just not comfortable for you dealing with anymore. And you feel the urge to say something, to do something. But all of a sudden, when the opportunity presents itself, you end up completely going against what you thought you were going to say, or how you feel inside is not lining up with what you said in that moment. And then the question becomes, well, why can't I just say it? What's going on in the back of my head? What's going on in the front of my head? What's going on the sides of my head? What's going on in my brain? It caused me to say it myself, I want to say this one thing, and it got immediately flipped in less than a few seconds to say something completely different, even if it wasn't what you were really feeling. So for the sake of this analogy, we can imagine the parts of the brain involved in this whole exercise as C-suite executives in a company. Your brain essentially is a company comprised of a number of C-suite executives, each taking a different role in the company that is you. So in a situation, a nice guy is in a conversation with someone and they feel the urge to people please to avoid conflict with them because they don't want to disagree with them. They don't want to upset the peace. They just feel like I'd be happier, or they'd be happier with me if I said what they want me to hear instead of what I really feel. So starting off in the prefrontal cortex, this is basically the CEO of your brain. The CEO picked up that somebody wants something from you, and the nice guy in you perceives a potential conflict. Ideally, you'd make a rational decision, but instead, your immediate thought is to say, I need to avoid conflict or say something to please this person, which then triggers a chain reaction within your head. Next up is your amygdala, which is we'll call it a head of security. So in this case, your amygdala might pick up that there might be potential danger or something's wrong in a social situation, and it raises the alarm telling you that you might get rejected or you might get criticized or you might lose social status if you actually challenge the person in this moment by speaking what you really feel. And the priority then is to reduce this threat internally by being agreeable, by people pleasing. And in this case, trying to fight that feeling might lead to a response of anxiety or stress hormones that might enter your system as a result. Along with this is your hippocampus, which essentially is your corporate historian. Your hippocampus is really good at remembering all the times in the past that maybe you argued with somebody, you disrupted the peace, you challenged someone's opinion and they didn't really like it, and it didn't make you feel good that they weren't happy with you. So the hippocampus will actually aid in trying to get you to avoid speaking your mind or having this conflict or disagreeing with somebody. Next, we have the anterior cingulate cortex, which is kind of like your director of HR. This one tries to relieve the emotional tension you're feeling in your system by leaning into empathy and emotional regulation. It's hyper-focused on making sure the other person is happy by scanning their emotional responses and adjusting their behavior to maintain harmony. You may notice this if you've ever caught yourself watching their facial features or their gestures and thinking about what to say next based on how they look, based on what you're saying, instead of just continuing what you're saying and how you feel. And this is when you might have an involuntary feeling or urge or words that come out you didn't intend to say because it's overriding what you really want to say and what you're feeling in the moment in order to keep the peace based on this instant feedback you're getting when you're reading this person's facial cues. Along the way, you might be feeling a little bit stressed out. Your cortisol levels might be rising. Your stress level hormones might be rising. Your insula is picking up on this too. In this case, maybe your heart rate goes up a little bit. You feel a little bit of tension in your muscles, a little knot in your stomach, because what part of you really wants to do is say how you really feel, but at the same time, your body is desperately trying to keep and maintain social equilibrium by not rocking the boat in this case. At this point, your insula is trying to tell your body that you're under stress, but your CEO in your brain is trying to ignore it in order to maintain social harmony. Next in line is your ventral striatum, which is essentially like your chief reward officer. In an attempt to seek a quick win by making the other person happy, or avoiding confrontation, or receiving a positive reaction by saying something that they visibly were happy that you said, this reinforces the behavior by providing a small dopamine hit to the nice guy, which makes you feel momentarily reprieved and feel pretty good, which actually reinforces the habit. And finally, at the end, even though the rational decision and the logical decision may have been to speak your mind, be honest, be open, the flood of emotions going on from the other parts of your brain in that C-suite of executives will override your CEO's ability to make that rational decision and lean towards a more emotionally driven decision to keep the peace, even at the expense of you not being honest with yourself in this moment, which ends up making you feel better, which ends up reinforcing the habit, which ends up causing it to just get worse and worse and worse the more you do it. And you'll walk away thinking, that made sense for me to say that in that moment, when in reality you might have the feeling of, actually, no, it didn't. I wish I really wanted to speak my mind, say something different and talk about how I feel, but I was just terrified. I was anxious. I was nervous. I couldn't do it. I don't know why. I don't know why I couldn't do it. Why couldn't I do it? Because all that stuff going on in the back of your brain, it's been reinforced over and over and over and over again throughout your life. So basically, in sequence, you have a perceived threat or a need for approval. Your amygdala fires the alarm. Your hippocampus is recalling past times when you tried to do this and it failed. Your anterior cingulate cortex is focusing on people-pleasing. Stress is building in your body from your insula. Avoiding this stress is rewarding yourself via the striatum. And then your prefrontal cortex decides people-pleasing is the best course of action here. This is a loop that's going to get itself reinforced over and over and over again the more you allow it to. And the reason I'm saying all this in a nutshell is to better understand that your people-pleasing habits may not be your fault. This may have been something that you, over a long period of time, have just come conditioned to based on your environment, based on your family, based on your friends, your upbringing. You have never been effectively coached or encouraged to speak your mind or to challenge the status quo or let people know how you feel. So then how do we go about changing this behavior? How do we go about rewriting the code in the algorithm? One thing you can work on doing is simple breath work to improve on emotional self-regulation when these moments arise, when you're feeling emotionally dysregulated, when you have opportunities to speak your mind. Learning how to calm yourself down and keep the rational thinking in check while the emotions are flaring off in these moments is a big part of learning to break this pattern. Another one would be to take small opportunities to try authentically expressing how you're feeling. Every time you find yourself talking to somebody and you find that you're changing what you noticed you wanted to say in the moment, or subtracting some words or adding some more words to make sure it flows properly the way you think it wants to be said. Or if you can catch yourself and recognize that I said that in the moment only because I wanted to make you happy, not because that's how I actually felt. Wasn't the truth. Repeating this action over and over and over again will start to train yourself to stop seeking the dopamine hit of people pleasing and start eventually seeking the emotional grounded self-regulation of speaking your mind and not being afraid of the outcome. If you or somebody you know is a nice guy or someone has a difficulty with authentic expression, do me a favor and share this video with them. It helps me a ton, and it helps me a lot to understand the inner neurological workings of why I used to be doing this exact behavior myself. Why I could not understand why there were things I was thinking that was not lining up with the things I was saying based on the people around me, the environments that I was in. And through a lot of time and practice over time, I've broken this behavior myself. I am much more authentic than I used to be. But it takes time, it takes practice, it takes guidance, and it takes persistence. If you enjoyed this, do me a favor and subscribe and follow from wherever you're watching from or listening to this too. And until next time, let's keep adapting. Let's keep improving.